Hi, welcome to Black History Month. In quotes, Black History Truths. I hope what I'm going to tell you today will be of great experience for you during this 31 days of Black History Month. And today we're going to talk about King James I and King James VI. He was King James I of England and Wales, I believe it was, because England and Wales has always been kind of connected. And then he was King James VI of Scotland. And I believe it came about through the death of one of the family. And he happened to end up being both King of England and King of Scotland. Yeah. And his mother's name was Mary Queen of Scots. So that was his mother. And she married, as far as I remember, Lord Darnley. Let's have a look. So yeah, so he married, and he actually came from the House of Stuart. And everybody, well, people that know history knows that the House of Stuarts was mostly Black people. And his real name was, I know it's Charles something. So hold on. His real name was, let me tell you quickly, James Charles Stuart, and he was born in 1566. I've got some articles on actual the story of where and what, and I think if anything, if I remember rightly, he died in Hertfordshire when he did die. But here it says here, James the Sixth and First was King of Scotland, and James King of Scotland and King of England and Ireland. It says here, James the First from the Union of Scottish and English crowns on the 24th of March 1603 until his death in 1625. The Kingdom of Scotland and England were individual sovereign states with their own parliaments, judiciaries, laws, though both were ruled by James in a personal union. And you can see, if you see him, that you can look at him. There's a picture of him, but let me just put it up a little bit so you can, so it's much more. So yeah, this is James. Oops, get myself up there. And here's another picture of him. And that one's a bit, that belongs to a book. I'm trying to see if I can put the information at the end of everything I can try. Yeah, but there's a book on him. That would be very interesting if you could, you know, you don't need to purchase them all. You can actually click into it and read some of the history about him. That's when he, this is as him as a Black person, not as a now white person. This was him again. And the coin that he had when he was reigning. So, what does that say? It's quite old English, isn't it? Really. But yeah, that was it. Check on. You might be able to. Yeah, so that's him. And what does it say? Hold on. A brief history. Oh yes, this is the book. The book is called King James: A Brief History of Black Nobility in Europe. So that's, if you want to have a look at that book. It doesn't tell me who's it by, but I mean, you'll be able to find it and see the picture that I showed you before, which is this one, is where that picture came from, off that book. And yeah, there it is. Okay, so today is the 4th of October. This is our 4th day into the month. I hope you're enjoying it with all the other things that are going on with Black History Month. And I'm enjoying myself just finding out all this really amazing history, rather than every minute we're slaves, or you can only be a trumpeter, or, you know, a servant, or some sort of, you know, menial, low, you know, class jobs that they're trying to sort of place us, you know. At the end of the day, you know, I don't think this is about the job as such, but we are also of royal blood and nobility and so forth. There was something I wanted to read, and I noticed, let me just quickly finish this about him. So yeah, so he was buried in Westminster Abbey. That is an interesting thing. So you might want to go and have a little nosy down there. And he said he was born in Edinburgh Castle, Scotland. That is a turn up for the books. Very interesting. And when he died in Theobald's House, Hertfordshire, England. So look at that. You know, it's a really amazing. So yes, so it says James was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and a great grandson of Henry VII, King of England and Lord of Ireland. So that's who his great grandfather was. And thus a potential successor to all three thrones. Can you imagine? He succeeded to the Scottish throne at the age of 13 months after his mother was compelled to abdicate in his favor. Okay, so there you have it. It says here, in 1603, he succeeded the last Tudor monarch of England, because the Tudors also were Black people as well. And if you notice when you're doing history at school, they talk about, I think, the House of Windsor. They don't talk much about the Tudors, because I remember when I was young, they never talked much about the Stuarts. They sort of breezed through it. And Tudors, they didn't really speak much about that as well. You know, it wasn't a lot going on. It was other house, I think the House of Hanover or something like that. They spoke a lot more on that. So it says here, 1603, he succeeded the last Tudor monarch of England and Ireland, which was Elizabeth I, who died childless. He continued to reign in all three kingdoms for 22 years, a period known as the Jacobean era. Sometimes I don't know if you could sort of say Jacobean era. I will just say that's what it says. Yeah. So a great king. And also, you know, he was the king that also wrote it wasn't called the King James Version, it was called the King James Bible. Yeah. So he was the one that had some part in that. And yeah. Here it also said he achieved most of his aims in Scotland, but faced great difficulties in England, including the gunpowder plot in 1605. Remember that? I mean, I weren't there, but I remember to do with Guy Fawkes. So he was actually around then. That's quite interesting. And repeated conflicts with the English Parliament. See, under James, the golden age of Elizabethan literature and drama continued with writers such as William Shakespeare, John Donne, and Ben Jonson, so forth, Francis Bacon. So all these people were around at this time. It's quite interesting. So it's quite interesting, that is. Right. So that is King James the First and King James First of England, King James of England, and then King James the Sixth of Scotland. Let me just. Right. So he married. King James married, I think, was Anne of Denmark. Let's have a quick look. So he married, Anne of Denmark. That means obviously she's Danish. And they had, how much children did they have? Just looking, because they had this thing going around that he wasn't married and all this nonsense, but that wasn't true. All of us silly things that people like to say. I think it's because they knew he was Black and he was obviously trying to make it sound like he, give derogative remarks about him, and it's only because he was probably of color. It says here he had a child, he had a son called Henry, Prince of Wales, Elizabeth, Queen of Bohemia, Margaret, Charles I, King of England. So I think that might have been Charles I, who they also beheaded, because there was a lot of things going on in those days. And I know that was a child, because I was saying to you that how I stumbled on the Black King was that it said Charles I was a Black king. So that means that maybe Anne of Denmark must have been Black too. I was thinking she was a white-skinned woman, because I don't know nothing much about her. So I know Charles I, if it's the same Charles I, which I believe it is, King of England, hold on, let's have a look. He then would have been, he was black. So both parents were black. So that means that in Denmark, there were black people as well. Because obviously she's black and obviously, and she's, her father, let's have a look at her father. This is her father, who her father was. All right. So Anne of Denmark, she married him, as far as I understand, at the age of 14. And yeah, does it say her father? Yeah. So let me just quickly run through the children. And Robert also had a child called Robert, Mary, and Sophia. So it looks like he's had about 9 children. Sophia, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, 7. That's 7. Am I counting right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Well, that's still quite a lot. And her father was Frederick II of Denmark. Her mother was Sophie of Mecklenburg Güstrow. Right. I don't know these people, but I think that, you know, I will go away. You can also go away and check this and, you know, check who this Sophie was, because I know you had the Queen Sophia, but I don't know if it's the same woman. And I'm sure she was from Mecklenburg or something like that as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was her mother. But, well, I don't know that yet, so I'm not going to say that. But I know that Charles I definitely was a king. And it says he was the King of England. So obviously when his father died, they must have made him king, or he became king, because it says Charles I, King of England. So it must be the same Charles, which is very interesting. And what's interesting then, possibly, well, I know Mary Queen of Scots was definitely a black woman, and that was King James's mother. So, and she was, as far as it was, I'm sure she was also beheaded as well, or something like that. She was, I don't know why they were doing all these things to these people, you know, it just kind of looked not really nice. And so there we are. This is our King James the First and King James VI. You know that he was married to Anne of Denmark. Right, let me just have a quick look at something. Yeah, so what I didn't realize is Lord Darnley was the second husband of Mary Queen of Scots. So his father was actually Henry Stuart, and then obviously at some point she must have married 2 men or something like that, because it says spouse Francis of Second of France. So no, so Henry Stuart. I'm not sure if Henry Stuart is also Lord Darnley, but it does say Henry Stuart here. And what happened, she was forced off the throne. So I'll show you his mother. She definitely was a black woman. There she is there. What does it say? The destruction of rough ruin of Mary Queen of Scots. So that was Mary Queen of Scots. And I seem to think they've got anything else. This is another day. We're not going to look at that one. Naughty. Right. So Mary, the only surviving legitimate child of King James IV, that's his daughter. So he must have called his daughter after his mother. But the mother had to abdicate, because when I'm looking at it, it says that Mary first of Scotland, until she was forced to abdicate in 1567. She was also known as Mary Stuart, so that's quite interesting. Mary Stuart, so she definitely was married to Henry Stuart. And I don't know how Lord Darnley, maybe Lord Darnley is the same person, sorry, but yeah. So she married her half cousin, who was Henry Stuart. Lord Darnley, I think it's the same person by the looks of it. There you are. Yeah. goes, and here it goes. In February 1567, Darnley's residence was destroyed by an explosion, and he was found murdered in the garden. Ooh, weird. And it says James Hepburn, fourth Earl of Bothwell, was generally believed to have orchestrated Darnley's death, but he was acquitted of the charges in April 1567. The following month, he married Mary. Following an uprising against the couple, Mary was imprisoned in Loch Leven Castle. So you can always, when you go to Scotland, look it up. Loch, like the Loch Ness monster, that's what they say. Loch, and then Leven, Leven, and then Castle. Yeah. I remember James was also born in Edinburgh Castle. So that's another interesting thing. That's why it would be interesting to go out for the day and go and see these places. Remember, you're expected to go there thinking that you're going to, because remember, it's white history, and really and truly, this is not white history. It's actually Black history, but whitewashed by he who wins the war tells the story. So, and then there's another castle as well. Mary was found guilty of plotting to assassinate Elizabeth. And in 1586, and was beheaded. I knew I read it somewhere. She was beheaded the following year at Fotheringhay Castle. So that's another place to go to. F for Freddie, Otheringhay, Fotheringhay Castle. There's quite a few, and it wouldn't surprise me if the castles are still around, because I do know that quite a few of these castles were actually destroyed. Just want to go back for a second so I can read something. So there were lots of Black people in Wales as well. Here we are. This is one of a tribe, okay? Because you had the Celts, the Gaelic tribes, and so here, let's just quickly read it. It says that at the time of the Roman conquest, there were at least two distinct peoples in Britain: the tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed Celts. And I know that some Celts were also Black as well. I'll find that somewhere for you and read that. Identical with the Gaelic tribes and the dark complexioned, wavy-haired South Welsh men. And they were called the Silurs. So you could look that up as well and find out about their history. So that would be very interesting. So you can see that. And who are compared by Tacitus to the Iberi of Spain. So that's you can look up the Iberia of Spain as well. That's interesting because one thing leads to another. Excuse me for coughing. So this comparison is now amply justified by a visit to most Welsh towns on a market day, say Denbigh or St Asaph's. So I didn't finish this. I know I've got more to this, but I just thought I'd stop because I just want you to see that there were. Hold on, let me just get myself out of the way. Oops. Oh, I don't know. I don't to move this. So look, Silurs were Black. Yeah. So you can look that tribe up as well. Right. So, I mean, looking at Mary Queen of Scots, it also went on to say that after an unsuccessful attempt to regain the throne, that's Mary Queen of Scots, she fled southward, seeking the protection of her first cousin, once removed, Queen Elizabeth of England. How amazing is that? Wow. So I think also in those days, some were Catholics and some were Protestants. And so I think there was always this fight between whether they were all Black, but they were, one was saying, no, we're Catholics. The other one would get on the phone and say, no, we're Protestants. And so it went backward and forwards. And so you had that. But I think that Elizabeth I had her beheaded, her own cousin beheaded. And going on from there, you've got that both Mary and the husband that she married, Lord Darnley, were grandchildren of Margaret Tudor, the sister of Henry VIII of England. So that tells you that you can link it, because then, you know, Henry VIII was definitely black as well. But I'll go on to that another day. There's a lot more about him. So both Mary and Darnley, they were cousins when they married anyway, were grandchildren of Margaret Tudor. Okay, this is a Tudor family, because you've got the Stuarts and the Tudors, sister of Henry VIII of England, and patrilineal. So I know it's to do with male side, isn't it? Patrilineal descendants of the High Stewards of Scotland. Stewards of Scotland. That's interesting, really interesting. Okay, so right. Okay, so there you are. And then there's another castle that you can go and look at. And it says that, and this is why you need to look things up, because you probably might find, like I said to you, lots of castles were being destroyed. And you need to ask yourself the question, how comes these castles were being destroyed? Monasteries were burnt down and land was taken as well from them. Think about all these things. And it says here that, right, so it says hold on a minute. So the castle's called Wemyss Weemans. This is that Scottish word, so I don't really know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I'll spell it anyway. W-E, M for mother, Y, S for sugar, castle in Scotland. Okay. Okay, and so let's have a look what else is there. And there's another place they were married at Holyrood Palace. Here, look, Holyrood Palace. So Holyrood Palace. That's another interesting thing. So I don't want to read all of it because it's quite a lot, but I like to, look at the actual places, names of places, and things like castles and palaces. I know that Henry VIII used to go to that palace that was there in Eltham, isn't it? There's a palace in Eltham, not far from Greenwich. That's another palace. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's actually the palace that's there. He used to go there quite often compared to when he used to go to the what's that one that we always go to? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't remember it. But most children from schools go there. Patrilineal. It's a funny word to say. So I think it's on the father's side. As I said, when I was talking about the patrilineal like as in matrimonial. So I think it's more on the father's side that they were family. Yeah. So Henry Stuart, who is Lord Darnley? It says it here. Yeah. Shortly after the murder of Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, 1567. So Mary's son by Darnley, James, was born. Okay, so James was born on 9th of June, 1566 in Edinburgh Castle, which I already said. However, the murder of Rizzio led to the breakdown of her marriage while staying at Jedburgh in the Scottish borders. I wonder if this place is still around, Jedburgh. And also, there's another castle, again, Hermitage Castle. So you want to look at these things. And in regards to his mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, she didn't live that long in terms of when she was on the throne. She wasn't on the throne that long, I should say, really. And imagine her cousin Elizabeth I, she got her beheaded because I think she probably thought that she was trying to also assassinate Elizabeth I, and she's the one that never had any children and died childless. There's another castle again, you might want to look that up. Craig Miller Castle. So that's C for Charlie, RAIG, M for mother, ILLAR Castle. Now, you know, it's Black History Month, and I just wanted to talk about Black history in terms of royal family, because England was always saying that there's no blacks, wasn't here, the white race was there before them. But if you look at the beginning when I spoke about Arthur, King Alfred the Great, so that tells me that hold on for a second. Yeah, so I just chose to deal with royal people, noblemen, and to show that England or this side of the world didn't just have white people here; they also had black people here too. And as you know, King Arthur, as I said, King Arthur the Great was here first. He might have been king of England as such, but he was king of West Sussex, king of Wessex. But in those days, they had kingdoms like you did in Africa. You had kingdoms, you know, and you reigned over your kingdom. And at some point, it then became one like England. I think maybe all over the world has probably had people ruling over their kingdoms, and then obviously it didn't change to a vaster, bigger kingdom, a bigger country, as in kingdoms put together, making it into England, because, you know, obviously Wessex, Sussex, all those places are now just normal towns or areas, and they're no longer kingdoms. So that's the same thing I think they did sort of slightly in Africa as well, isn't it? The kingdoms that were there, they now broke them down into probably 2 kingdoms, 3 kingdoms, stuff like that. And there you have it. So yeah, so that's the reason why I chose Black History to do in Black History Month, to do about royals and noble people, that we weren't just slaves, we were much more than that. And imagine having kings and queens that are black in England. They were the Tudors and the Stuarts. There were other names, and I will go into that another day, but I just want to keep it simple so that you can go and do your research. I did come across some more places, castles, and it was they were saying that there's another place called the Holyrood Palace. Was it Palace? Holyrood Abbey. Holyrood Abbey. So you want to look that up, and I'm guarantee you probably ain't going to find anything like that, because a lot of stuff was burnt. So Holyrood Abbey, okay, and then the Holyrood Palace. And we know about did I say? I hope I said Dunbar Castle, because I think I did. And then also they travelled through Stirling in Scotland. So all of this is Scotland. Quite interesting. And yeah, so yeah, well, we've come to the end of this we've come to the end, and I hope that I might not have been able to give you a video this time around, but at least we got some good stuff out of it. You know, King James the First was the one that wrote the King James Bible. I think it was the 16 was it 1611, something like 1603 to 1611, one of those. I'm not sure, but I know it's 1600 and at the beginning of the 17th century. So yes, here we have it. King James I, King James VI. His mother was Mary Queen of Scots, and his obviously, if her cousin was first cousin or cousin was Elizabeth I, then obviously she's also related to him as well. And known that he actually was born here. Actually, he didn't say he was born in Africa. He didn't say he was traveled over here. He was actually born here, and he also died here. So there were people that were born in in England here, and they were black. Okay, and at some point there was a war, and there was quite a few wars, and I think one of them was called the War of Roses. That's a very interesting thing. So you might want to look that up as well. But anyway, we've come to the end, and thank you for being with me and watching. And please let us go out and do our, just travel and go out and look at these places which I've mentioned, because I'm sure that you probably ain't going to find some of these castles that I mentioned and places that I mentioned and palaces and stuff, because I do remember when I was reading history that these things have been burnt, and I couldn't understand if England cherishes their heritage, they would not really burn these castles down just like that. There are things that are, you can, look back in history, but obviously it's belongs to it's much more than we think it is. So I personally believe that the castles that they were reigning in and they were living in other words, as well, not all of them have been burnt down, but a lot of them have, and you have to answer yourself the question, how comes? Okay, right, we come to the end of the program, as I said, and so please don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe, hit the notification button, and also the like button, and give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Thank you. See you again.